In Ephesians chapter 4, verses 15 and 16, we read that we should speak the truth in love. How do you balance that? A lot of people speak the truth, but they're not so gracious. Jesus wants to transform us so that we become more gracious like him. In Luke chapter 4, we read that his words were so gracious. Are your words gracious today? What about with people who push your buttons? People who don't have the same set of beliefs or faith as you, have a different perspective, have different viewpoints and preferences or opinions. Are you dealing with that today? How can you be gracious to them? Grace is something that Jesus brings into our speech and our actions. In that Ephesians 4 passage, we build one another up in love. Will you intentionally build someone up today in love with a comment? I was listening to the old preacher E.V. Hill, who's now with the Lord, and his wife, he calls her Baby. He came home early on in ministry, and Baby had set up a candlelight dinner. And he thought, wow, what a surprise. And as they were enjoying dinner, and he went over to turn on the electricity, none of the lights worked. And he started to ask Baby some questions. He said, okay, what's happened? And Baby explained the power has been turned off because they weren't paying their bills. Now, E.V. Hill, he said, she could have broken his spirit because as a provider at that point, the bills weren't getting paid. But instead, Baby came out and said, let's do this romantic candlelight dinner. She was so gracious. She could have slammed him, but she was gracious. She built him up. And E.V. Hill has been used by God to reach millions of people. At the funeral, E.V. Hill was careful to just honor Baby and talk about how time after time she was so gracious with him. Is that your legacy? To be gracious? Continue to speak the truth, but speak the truth in love.